Okay, well, I hope today kind of makes it self-evident why I joined. When a good friend of mine remarked upon hearing that I joined the Workers' Party, he came out straight away and said, "You're absolutely mental." But he followed that. He's followed that by saying that there's method in your madness, and I suppose what he meant, or I hope what he meant, is that there's certainly larger parties on the left in Ireland at the moment. There's a lot of parties with significant political weight, ones with a higher profile, and even ones with seats in the Dáil. But by delving deeper into the party's history and tradition, I think it can play a role again in helping to fill the gap that exists in Irish politics. And the friend who I mentioned, we'd agree on very little, but we would agree on one thing, and that is that there is a gap in Irish politics, a vacuum that exists, and that vacuum in Irish politics is between, in my opinion, ultra-left components and what was social democracy, and which has now been replaced by a populist Sinn Féin. I say populist because anyone who read their 2007 election manifesto will know that we'll see where the Tory Stormont deal came from, and we'll see how that sits so comfortably with that organisation. But in my opinion, within that vacuum there exists a space for an explicitly Marxist and socialist organisation to exist that stands unashamedly against capitalism, yet doesn't stand afraid to fight for significant reforms for ordinary working class people, reforms that will make the quality of their lives in the here and now better too. And at a time in Irish society when nearly a whole generation has been lost to a Great Depression, I don't believe it is simply enough anymore for radical organisations to simply be about slogans and sound bites. Radical policy should, in my opinion, be part an integral part of a revolutionary programme, and in my opinion, it doesn't dilute it, but it improves it. I think just on that, the discussion today on the trade unions exemplified that, in my opinion. It's clear that the left has a very difficult task ahead of itself at the moment in Ireland, because on one hand it's faced with rebuilding a fairly fractured and weak working class movement, and on the other hand it's faced with building its own forces. And within that process, it's not always always a very easy task. And the Workers' Party's involvement in trade unionism has always been a serious and long-term approach. And that does mean engaging with difficult questions like we heard today. And there obviously was differences of opinion on orientation towards trade union leadership, or what certain tactics should be employed. And those discussions are not always pleasant, but they are certainly necessary if we are ever to get anywhere, in my opinion. And I think one thing that would be a positive outcome of today is if the people who are involved in trade unions, both the union officials and the union members, if there was a possibility of forming a trade union caucus to strengthen the WP's intervention into trade unions at the moment. So just to follow on from that point, when myself and others joined last year, we'd been part of a process whereby we'd been meeting regularly for roughly a year, and essentially we were trying to figure out what the best avenue would be to be able to repopulise what we termed pragmatic Marxism. And what I mean by pragmatic Marxism is the type of Marxism that is obviously explicitly socialist, and that also, importantly, looks to carve out a path towards socialism. The conclusion that we drew was that the Workers' Party, in reality, had been the only organisation in the state that had managed to do that on any kind of mass scale. My generation will be one of the first, one of the few, I should say, in history where we'll be significantly worse off than that of our parents. We will soon have an army of skilled and educated young people who will not be able to fulfil the expectations that they have been promised by society, and many people of that generation, I believe, are in agreement that the current system is rotten and unjust. that the political and economic failings don't just come about because of a poor choice of government, but that they are systemic, that essentially there's a them and us in society, and that this is based on, rooted within a system that's based on class division. But those people need no convincing that we need a change, but they do need convincing that it is socialism that needs to replace capitalism. And that task for socialists is not an easy one. To be able to assimilate its ideas into the mainstream, in particular with the onslaught of neoliberal hegemony that exists in today's society. And I think the fact that the newly reformed Dublin branch, which comprises many new members, was permitted so wholeheartedly, but also encouraged to be able to put forward these discussion papers, just shows quite clearly just how serious the organisation is in engaging with these questions. And in my opinion, to achieve victories along the way in socialism, along the way to socialism is key. It's those victories that give a sense of confidence and make the working class stronger, and will help us ultimately to change the system. And I believe that the Workers' Party understands that. There's a quote that's often said and attributed to Engels, and it's I'm sure many in the room will know it. It's an ounce of action is worth a ton of theory. It's also attributed to Lenin, Gandhi, some American poet called Ralph Emerson. Anyway, it's all nonsense because none of them said that. I looked this up on Google the other day. It's an ancient English proverb. And anyway, but my point here is that the quote is often used as a sort of a justification to dismiss theory or academia, to sort of say that political ideas and theory are not really relevant to the political activist. And that's not to say, obviously, that people have wide-ranging skills, and though the documents that were put forward today could be done by anyone in the same way that canvassing on a door could be done by everyone. But I do believe that ideas shouldn't be just dismissed as only for intellectuals or academics. I think that working class people have an integral role to play in their development and in their enrichment. And I also believe that political organisations shouldn't take a dogmatic view on these things either. That there will be many opinions from wide-ranging groups, etc., and they should all be respected and viewed on their own merits. And ultimately, tactics that socialists employ are just tactics, and it's not heresy to have differences of opinion. And on that note, I think, look, left has played a crucial role within Irish society and the left in Ireland to being able to create a platform and an arena for the left to debate these ideas on a whole plethora of issues. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that this has forced many people to reconsider how they view and engage with politics in Ireland. And the recent launching of Think Left at the Ardèche is another reflection of just how serious the organisation takes this. I'm very excited by the idea that members from across the branches and across the party now have a journal to be able to discuss and debate wide-ranging views. And I think that this will be an integral part in helping us to rebuild the organisation in Dublin, providing a forum to engage in a stimulating way with radical politics. And I think in many ways the serious orientation to understanding history and ideas is linked to the party's movements and traditions that they align themselves to. Many of the great communist and workers' parties across Europe would trace their own lineage back to the French Revolution of the 18th century, and obviously the Workers' Party is no different. And I think that's important for many reasons, and in particular in Ireland, where it shows that socialist and indeed Republican history didn't begin in 1916 or 1917 for that matter, but goes much further back. And what it also shows is that politics and Marxist and Republican and socialist ideas continue to develop and enrich themselves along the way. And whilst it's true that the word Republican unfortunately has been lost somewhat publicly by to those who misuse it, I've been very impressed by how the organisation looks to not just make it banished in the history books, but constantly attempts to grapple and understand the true meaning of the word. So I'd just like to conclude by saying I hope I speak for the many new members who've joined the branch over the last 6 months in saying that it's been a thoroughly exciting period, one in which I think that has been the culmination of this fantastic event, and hopefully that the ideas and the discussion papers that have been launched today will play a significant role in getting the Workers' Party back to being a vital force in Irish politics.